Conquest coming to Italy. You will get things quite cheaply. Warhammer, Warhammer, Warhammer.
How you doing, guys? Big Mac School here again today, back once again with another episode of my Warhammer 40,000 Conquest series for you. Once you've watched this video, don't forget to head over to the Hobby Corner and check out his latest video on the channel there for more building and painting in relation to Warhammer 40,000 Conquest. So, you may have guessed from the intro that Warhammer 40,000 Conquest is expanding into a new country, and it's Italy. So, yeah, last video, or the last time they expanded it to a new country, I did speak a bit of the lingo from that country. It was Spain, and I did Spanish in school, so I was pretty confident doing that. I could, of course, have used Google Translate to find the correct Italian intro for myself, but I figured I'd just do a bit of Italian culture, throw a bit of opera in there instead. It was either that or do a Mario impression or something, but you don't want to see that, do you?
Yeah, we do.
What do you mean you want to see that? Alright, go on then. Hey, it's a me, Mario! But he's not really Italian, is he? So, yeah, you're not going to get that again. Anyway, on with this issue. We've got issue 51. And I read it yesterday, so I'm going to be looking down at this one quite a bit, as I have been doing recently. But what do we get with issue 51? Well, we get the Heretic Reactor. The Heretic Reactor is a big... I think when they launched it, it doesn't actually tell you this in here, but I think when they launched it, the reason it's called the Heretic Reactor is because it churns blood around, and it's like the blood of martyrs or something in there that I think they mix with promethium, and that's like a power source, something along those lines. But yeah, we get that in there, and it is a £27.50 kit, and you get two of them in there. I did mention on a video 2 weeks ago that you get two in the kit, I think, but I didn't mention it in last week's video when I was talking about what were we getting this week. So yeah, just to be clear, you get two of the Heretic Reactors in there. Thanks for the people that pointed that out in the comment section last week as well. So that means £27.50 for the kit. Divide that by two, what's that? £13.75. So you're getting around £13.75's worth of terrain there in this magazine, which is it's good. So we're saving what? £5, £5.50-ish, £5.70-ish, £5.76. So it's a good saving, where we're getting almost double the value of the magazine, basically. So the also in here, Salamanders chapter, very exciting, another first founding legion / chapter of Space Marines there, and Heretic Astartes, more on them. Turning to the first page, it's the Salamanders that get covered on the first page. Chapter name, Salamanders, Homeworld Nocturne. It's a very irradiated planet, and it's highly volcanic. The volcanic activity level is high there. And the prime marker of the Salamanders is Vulcan. Major engagements include the Badab War, Defense of Nocturne, and the Promethean War. Specialisms, Flamecraft. They like flamer weapons. Weapon smithing, so forging their own weapons, and close-range firefights. A little more on them. Rather than being organised into 10 companies, as the Codex Astartes decrees, the Salamanders retain their pre-heresy organisation. They're split into 7 warrior houses. The warriors in each house are recruited predominantly from one of the 7 great settlements on Nocturne. So, a little deviation there, despite the fact that when Codex Space Marines is released, the Salamanders are included in just the standard book, where certain other chapters like Space Wolves, Blood Angels and Dark Angels, they get their own separate codex. So despite the fact that their organisation isn't exactly the same as the Codex Astartes, they don't get their own codex, as certain other chapters do. And then it goes on to the next page to talk about company designation, and the first and second company have a white drake on a black shoulder pad. The third company have a red drake skull. Fourth company, a green drake skull on a black shoulder pad. The fifth company is a red shoulder pad with a black drake skull, a white drake skull and a red shoulder pad for the 6th company, and finally the 7th company is a white shoulder pad with a black drake skull, which I think looks really nice. So I'd be tempted to do 7th company if I was going to paint up some salamanders. And onto there's a little bit more information about master craftsmen. All salamanders are expert craftsmen and smiths. They often personalise and or forge their own war gear. And there's a lovely picture at the bottom of this page here with a salamander clashing with a salamander clashing with an armoured orc. It's an orc in mega armour, really. So yeah, it's an interesting pattern. It's got 2 power claws there. I'm not sure if you can load out your orcs with 2 power claws. I'm not. You know what? I bought the Orc Codex ages ago, and I've barely looked at any of the stats of the units in there. I know you only used to be able to take 1 power claw or 2 kill saws, but now I wonder. It's an old piece of artwork though, so possibly not. I do wonder though if you can take 2 power claws on your mega knobs now. I'll have to find out and maybe let you know in a future video. I'll probably forget, so don't hold your breath. Dark Imperium on the next page. The standard Armageddon. So this is a period of the Dark Imperium, basically. Once the Noctis Eterna opened up, and it covers some of the lore and the campaigns that have been fought by the forces of the Imperium. First off, it talks about the standard Armageddon, like I said. So orcs and Imperial forces were battling on Armageddon. All of a sudden, demons show up, and they even fight alongside each other. The orcs and humans fight alongside each other in certain clashes when the needs are most dire, when the circumstances are most dire, when needs must. So yeah, Ghazghkull Thraka invaded Armageddon on 2 occasions, and the second time he left to go and fight campaigns on other fronts, but there's always been orcs on Armageddon since then, so there's always been war on Armageddon with the orcs that have remained there. And it's an important world to orcs because it is formerly the planet Ullanor, where the Emperor of mankind during the Great Crusade he crushed a massive orc force on that planet. It was like the biggest war the galaxy had ever seen, and he crushed them, and these massive prime orcs, I couldn't think what they were called then. I think they called them prime orcs, or they're basically like super orcs, massive, like bigger than Ghazghkull Thraka. And that's one of the reasons a lot of orc players want Ghazghkull to be made into a prime orc, because they want him to evolve. The bigger a war gets and the longer an orc fights for, the bigger they grow. That's part of the lore, unless that's been retconned or something. So theoretically, if an orc's been fighting constantly for 10,000 years, it could be as big as a planet, or something ridiculous like that. I myself, I wouldn't mind seeing Ghazghkull being a little bigger. I think he should be bigger at least than Guilliman. Bulk-wise, he's comparable to Guilliman probably, but you look at the Orc War Boss now that's available, which used to be Gruk Face Ripper. You look at that model, and that's as big as the Ghazghkull model. The Ghazghkull model's in Mega Armour, so really Ghazghkull should be a lot bigger than that. Anyway, that's enough about orcs. I'm not supposed to be talking about orcs, I'm supposed to be talking about the Dark Imperium. Back to the Dark Imperium, the devastation of Baal. Baal, during the period after the Noctis Eterna opened up, Baal was under constant attack from High Fleet Leviathan, and the circumstances were so dire. I think I'm going to say that a lot in the next page. The circumstances were so dire that the chapter master of the Blood Angels called for all of the Blood Angel successor chapters to return to Baal to help defend it. All but one of the successor chapters did so, the missing one being the Lamenters. Even the Knights of Blood, who have been declared excommunicate traitoris by the High Lords of Terror, returned. So basically they're like renegade Space Marines now. Not quite fallen to chaos, but they serve their own needs now. They might answer the call to arms from the Imperium, because they probably still consider themselves. I don't know too much about that chapter, to be fair, but this is just me reading into it, how it's worded here. They might answer calls to arms by the Imperium, but the Imperium won't call them, where, you know, the parent chapter, the Blood Angels, will feel free to, or will call them. But other calls to arms, say if there's a planet that needs defending or something, just because a chapter of a former Imperial chapter of Space Marines has gone rogue, doesn't mean they won't help out other human planets and stuff like that, because at the end of the day, both human, but ultimately, if they fall to chaos, they're less likely to help out, they're far less likely, because they serve their new gods then, which he goes on to in the Heretic Astartes page. However, Terra retaliates. In an effort to seize the initiative, a strike force was mustered on Terra, supported by an entire army of Adeptus Custodes. So, for the first time in 10,000 years, Custodes were seen abroad in the galaxy, and they struck out in a big crusade fleet with Guilliman at the head of it. Plague of plagues, something terrible came out of the warp storm as they passed through the southern reaches of the Ultima Segmentum. It was the Death Guard and the Plague that walks. The Death Guard fought a massive campaign in the Ultima Segmentum in order to try and deplete the Ultramarines of what forces they had at the time. And there's no safe passage through the Great Rift until the Nachman Gauntlet was discovered, and it was somewhere that Astartes didn't want to venture to, because previously that was right near Cadia, which is really on the edge of the Eye of Terror, and that was somewhere that navigators, not Astartes, they were afraid to go to, because ships often lost their way in that area, but it turns out it becomes one of the stable routes across the Cicatrix Maledictum, the Gork's Grin. And then only war after that, as the Imperium gradually realizes the extent of the nightmare conditions created by the Great Rift, they try to adapt to a horrifying new reality. There were no more shield worlds, no more bastion systems. Every planet, even Holy Terror, was now on the front line of war for humanity's survival. Thus did the Dark Age grow darker. So that is basically saying that the whole galaxy is at war. Demons can now emerge all over the galaxy, which they could do before, but you needed like a summoning ritual, whereas it's easier for them to do it now because they've got that Great Rift going across the galaxy from the northwest corner to the southeast, more or less. And then Heretic Astartes on the next page. This page talks about the Black Legion to a certain extent, and the next page does definitely talk about the Black Legion, because it says Black Legion at the top there. During the Great Crusade, Horus's legion was called the Lunar Wolves. The Emperor renamed them the Sons of Horus to honour the accomplishments of their Primarch. When Horus turned traitor, his sons rebelled with him, fighting as Horus's bodyguard during the heresy. After Horus's death, they retrieved his body and fled into the Eye of Terror. There, the traitor legions fell to fighting amongst themselves. Led by their new master, Abaddon, the Sons of Horus welcomed members of all traitor legions into their ranks. They repainted their armour black in memory of their shame and renamed themselves the Black Legion. They have been a scourge upon the Imperium ever since, leading Black Crusade whenever they unite the factions of Chaos. They will not stop their attacks until the Imperium lies in ruins. So, Abaddon is very much a pragmatist when it comes to, he'll use what forces he has at his disposal. If he can unite everybody behind him, forces of Nurgle, forces of Khorne, forces of Zeech, forces of Slaanesh, he will unite them. He's not bothered who fights for him, as long as he has as much force behind him as is required to do the task at hand. So he's launched 13 Black Crusades over the 10,000 years since the Horus Heresy, and he will possibly launch more in the future. We'll have to see. One final assault on Terra, perhaps, to kill the Emperor or something like that. And then there's Renegades. It talks about, it's good that this section's in this magazine, I think, because with them mentioning the Knights of Blood being a excommunicata traitoris from the Imperium, That's basically I should have covered this when I was talking about that, but that's basically the Imperium and the Inquisition has declared them traitors, basically. And they are treated as such. They're treated basically like the Chaos Space Marines. So they won't intentionally call to them for aid, or the higher echelons of the Imperium won't anyway. But they may answer the call without the call being for them, really. So yeah, renegades. They're basically a renegade chapter now. They're Knights of Blood. And here it says, although it's rare for Adeptus Astartes to turn from the light of the Emperor, over the span of thousands of years, countless Space Marines have done so. Sometimes they have turned from light individually, sometimes in squads or companies, and in thankfully rare cases, even the entire chapters. Heretic Astartes showcase on these next couple of pages. They've got the miniatures here from the... what was the box set called? It was released a couple of months ago, so these miniatures have only relatively recently been released, including the Abaddon one there. It's a lovely miniature, that new Abaddon miniature. I've got an old Abaddon miniature that I was going to do a conversion on to make him a bit bigger, a bit more threatening, because in the Horus Heresy books, Abaddon's described as being much bigger than other Astartes. You know, he's close to a Primarch in size and potentially as big as certain Primarchs like Alpharius and Omegon, who, being twin Primarchs, were a bit smaller than their brothers. They were like standard marine size, they were described as, but interestingly the Forge World miniature for Alpharius is Primarch size, not marine size. But anyway, you know, it's a bit vague. Sometimes the books, the novels, don't always match up with the lore with the miniatures. So it's just one of those things, I guess. As long as you've got a nice model to represent the character at the end of the day, that's the main thing. It talks about some of the traitor legions and displays them on the next page. The Night Lords, first of all, are Chaos Space Marines and specialists in psychological warfare, inspiring fear in their enemies. Iron Warriors, Siege Breakers Supreme. The Iron Warriors march to war with all manner of cruel and deadly demon engines. And the Word Bearers, the ultimate heretics, the Word Bearers. They were... you should read a book, if you're interested in learning more about them, you should read a book called The First Heretic. I think it's by Aaron Dembski-Bowden. Is it Bowden or Bowen? Bowden, isn't it? Yeah, I think so. And that's a brilliant book. I think it's by him. Pretty sure it is. Could be wrong. But yeah, I love that book. It made me almost like the Word Bearers, which a lot of the Horus Heresy novels, when I read them, I start liking the legion that is the protagonist in each book. And I sort of fell hard for the Thousand Sons when I read A Thousand Sons. It's a really good book, A Thousand Sons. And even when I read The Burning of Prospero, somebody told me, it was a GW store manager in Manchester, he told me, once you read The Burning of Prospero, you'll see it from the other side, and you'll completely realise how wrong the Thousand Sons were in doing what they did, and Magnus's actions during that period. But I still didn't feel that way. I still felt like they were done harshly by the Thousand Sons. So I fell for them in a big way, but not necessarily the Primarch. He's not my favourite Primarch, which is interesting. On to the next page, how to build a Hemotrope Reactor. We've got a lovely layout here of the Hemotrope Reactor sprue. On to the next page, nice and easy. I'm probably not going to be building mine like this, like I mentioned in a previous video. I'm going to be using like the big silo thing, like the ferrotonic furnace, I think it might be called. Turn that on its side, put one end of the Hemotrope Reactor here, one end at the other end, and make a giant drum Hemotrope Reactor type thing. So there'll be a small conversion in there for me, and you'll hopefully get to see that in a future video. And then it's how to paint the Hemotrope Reactor. It's a decent paint job, nothing special really. Lead belch to start, then a null oil wash, on with some Abaddon Black in certain areas, or Abaddon Black rather. Celestial Grey in certain areas, Death Guard Green, picking out the dials, bit of gold around the dials and all the pipe work and stuff. You don't have to paint all the pipes in the gold, because it's just to pick out and make certain areas look different, I guess. Dry brush of Necron Compound, back with the Celestial Grey on certain areas. Abaddon Black again, the Fiston Red, blah de blah de blah, onto this page. And you can see it here. It's painted alright. I'd pick out, the pipes. Interestingly, on the next page and on the front cover, the pipes are painted red, but for some reason they've left the pipes the colour lead belcher, so I picked them out in red just to make it look a little bit different, because it looks like a lot of silver there to me. I don't like things when they're all just metallic. One of the reasons I started collecting a grey Night Force a few years ago, never got around to painting it. I was intending to paint it in grey rather than silver though, because I don't like all, things that are all silver, like all metallic for some reason. I prefer greys. I really like greys, but not silvers. Anyway, onto the Heretic Reactor rules. We get another little addition to the rules section of our collections here, and it talks about hazardous cover again, as we've seen on previous pieces of terrain. It was the little platforms we've got in the last 11 issues. Yes, what are they called? Thermic plasma conduits, maybe. Or thermic plasma regulators, perhaps. I think it's regulators, isn't it? So again, hazardous cover is really simple. If you can't remember what it is, though, I'll just refresh you here. So you roll a dice each time a model is in cover behind that. Right, let me think how to word this. I'll just read it off here. Roll a d6 each time you make a saving throw. On a 7+, in brackets, a roll of 6 plus 1 for being in cover, a model within 3 inches of any terrain feature with this ability in the shooting phase. I've just read that with completely the wrong cadence. On a 1, the model's unit suffers 1 mortal wound. So basically, each time you make a cover save for a model in cover behind this unit, if it's within 3 inches of it, roll a 1, and roll a dice, and on a 1, the unit suffers a mortal wound, which can't be saved. Against mortal wounds, you can take like a disgustingly resilient roll, but you can't make an invulnerable save against a mortal wound, so it could do you some damage, even if you've got invulnerable saves. So it's potentially relatively safe for the Death Guard to hide behind there, but not the Space Marines. And then it talks on the next page a little more detail about how you are in cover. So you're considered in cover if at least 25% of every model in your unit is obscured from the point of view of the firing unit. And then Power Surge. So this is the battle report this week. I was thinking I should have more pages. There is 1 page, it's just fallen off. So all the Power Surge, they're fighting over the Heretic Reactor this week. Unsurprisingly, it's a new terrain piece. Whenever there's a new terrain piece, they like to have us fight over it, don't they? It's all about supplying power to what they want to supply power to. The Space Marines deploy 2 of their units on the board at the start of the game. At the start of any of their movement phase, the Space Marine player can bring on their remaining units as reinforcements. They deploy by moving into the deployment zone from either board edge. And the armies consist of 3 command points for the Death Guard. Lord Felthius, he's back in action after his little skirmish with the other Plague Lord. Is it Plague Lord? Lord of Contagion. He's back in action now. Those 2 have sort of half sorted out the differences. And then he's got his Tainted Cohort as well, a Chaos Rhino, 5 Plague Marines and 12 Poxwalkers. Quite a slow force when you look at the battlefield and you see they're in opposite corners. It's going to be tricky for those miniatures to get across the battlefield. But the Space Marines consist of 3 command points, the Captain in Gravis Armour, 5 Intercessors, 3 Aggressors, 3 Hellblasters and 2 Inceptors. So it is at the start of any of their moves. So it's pretty much deploy 2 of their units. So you can pick your 2 units that you're deploying in that deployment zone. I'd probably go for the Intercessors and Hellblasters because they've got the longest range weapons. The Inceptors could be quite useful as well because you could move them around the board, get them into combat with the enemy, sort of use them as a distraction unit, try and draw the Death Guard player out onto a different area of the battlefield and away from your deployment zone. But anyway, the deployment zones are shown above. The Space Marine player deploys their units first, the Death Guard player then deploys all of their units. The Death Guard player takes the first turn. So, interestingly, it's saying the Death Guard player has to deploy in the Death Guard deployment zone there, which is, like I said, really far away from that Space Marine deployment zone. Being quite slow units, you're probably going to want to advance quite a lot. One thing I'd say, though, is if you play through this mission a couple of times, and if the Death Guard player really struggles to make it across into the enemy deployment zone there, perhaps use the rules from the datasheet for the Tainted Cohort and Lord Felthius. They can do a teleporter strike. So perhaps use those rules, incorporate those rules if the Death Guard player needs a little help getting to that deployment zone. And victory conditions: eliminate the enemy warlord for 1 victory point. The objective is the Hemetrope Reactor. Hold the objective 3 victory points. To hold an objective, you must have more models than the enemy within 3 inches of it at the end of the game. The game lasts 5 battle rounds. So the game's lasting 5 battle rounds. You've got a lot more models in the Death Guard side. You have 20 models. 22 models in the Death Guard side, including your Rhino. You can get your Plague Marines into your Rhino and take them across the battlefield quite quickly, I guess. But your Tainted Cohort are going to be quite slow, as well as your Poxwalkers. And your Space Marines have 3, 8, 11, 13, 14 models. The game has 5 battle rounds, yeah, so that's it. What we're getting next week, we are getting, as I said last week, we're getting the Astro Granite, which is more texture paint. It would have been nice, I think I mentioned this on last week's video. I felt it would have been nice if they'd given us Astro Granite Debris instead of Astro Granite, just to give us that little bit of variety and texture. Astro Granite Debris has got like thicker chunks in there. And also it's really good for vehicle bases, and because we've had a lot of vehicles now from both the Death Guard and the Space Marines, just that little bit of extra room on the base it'd be nice to take up with a bit of a chunkier texture paint, but they've given us just a standard Astro Granite. And then the following week it's another Space Marine bike, so it gives us a 3-man bike squad now, which is really cool. The Space Marine bike I think works out at £7.50 per bike, so it's slightly under the price you pay for the magazine. However, like I said, when we got the 2 bikes in a previous issue, you could just add the cost of 2 magazines up, which is £16, just under, and then work out the price of the bikes as a squad compared to that. So it's £22.50 I think for a bike squad, and £16 for 2 magazines. So you know it levels itself out quite nicely there, I'd say. I wonder what we're going to get in issue 54. I look forward to seeing what Italians think of Conquest as well in the future. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and I'll see you on the battlefield.